just go for it. Um, Good evening, I'm guessing, Dmitry. What time is it there?
Yeah, evening it's 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Wow. So for reference, it's 12 here. So you're in Moscow, correct? Right on. Okay. So welcome to Dream Talking. We're gonna get right into it. Um, I'm gonna hit you with the question that I hit most people. I was thinking on the way over, one of the things I don't want to do because I hear everybody doing it to you again and again is going, um, "Oh, is there a non-duality scene in Russia?" I'm like, he's got to be, he's got to be getting tired of hearing that. Are you muted? Um,
Uh,
are you muted, Dmitry? We just lost you
or
all
did
of a
we
sudden.
lose our sound?
We
No, our sound's on.
is
Sorry,
it?
that was me. I
Okay,
selected something
there we go.
wrong.
Okay. I saw your reaction. You were laughing at me.
Yeah, like maybe just somehow I'm the only one from Russia for that particular group of people.
Yeah.
So they're curious about many things.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll spare you that for the podcast, and I'm more into the idea of getting into your story, what kind of brought you to where you are here today, and then we'll just sort of riff on um, the shit we're in. I mean, obviously you're into non-duality, you're into Paul, so that's enough fuel to keep me going for 3 hours. Um,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we'll get a little bit of your backstory, introduce you to the Dream Talking community, and then we'll get into it. So I'll hit you with the first question I like to hit guests with is, um, can you think of a moment, maybe the first moment that comes to mind of when you knew that something was up, that the stories you were being told by maybe family or church or community wasn't quite the whole story. You knew there was something a little bit more. Anything come to
Yeah,
mind?
yeah. There was a period when I graduated from university in Moscow, and I was really tuned in into idea of kind of earning money. I was quite quite a compulsive shopper at the moment, and it was maybe the first time I earned some really good money, my first salary, and I was just buying stuff from some shorts from England and jeans or something like that. And then I I went to my first, yeah, so I worked for a month, and then I started having this like lingering feeling, like I just imagined myself sitting in the office till I'm 60 years old, and then I thought like something's not right. And
Something missing.
yeah, and then I thought, well, maybe that's the job, and I tried um, rearrange to another, basically the same thing, but to another office, which was like very nice office, like super A class or whatever. And I was working part time because I was still in my last year in the university, and then I was kind of enjoying because I was basically just arriving at the office. I was reading something, and then they were paying me, and I thought like, wow, that's cool. And then when time was to start working, and I started like for a few months, and my eyes were completely like hurting from the monitor,
Yeah.
and I was just, and I suddenly started having this like basically hysterical reactions. I would just go to the restroom, and I was just crying and crying because I was just super depressed about all that. And then it coincided that my friend introduced an idea to, because he was experiencing kind of the same thing with his job, and we decided we're gonna build a music studio. And and then it was like a dream at the first moment, because we quit our jobs, we just did what we enjoyed, and also started earning a little bit of money. And but then it suddenly started crashing, and like the whole business collapsed. And I had to find another job to pay back all the debts and stuff like that. And I didn't want to go to office, so I found a job in kind of uh, internet provider company that I was just working 24 hours, and then I had three weekday 3 days off,
Mm.
and basically in the night I could just go to bed. So I was basically working just 12 hours and then 3 days off, and I was really depressed, and I started tuning into some kind of esoterics, and probably even before that, I remember in retrospect, even when I was in school, I was on one hand I was kind of reaching and seeking for basically pleasures and I don't know, like girlfriends and stuff like that, and then I was still always interested in some kind of something, either it's science fiction, and it was Carlos Castaneda,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it's basically kind of was lingering since my teenage, but yeah, it probably the biggest part when something started shifting was when I graduated from university.
Right on. Cool. Well, all sorts of images popped up in my mind as you were sharing all that, which was really cool. One thing I was thinking of that my buddy Patrick, who's been on the podcast, I've heard other people say this, the idea of rearranging the furniture on the Titanic, right? That sense of thinking of, oh man, see, I'm in this office, I'm getting these cool clothes, I'm getting these paychecks, and then that flashing forward to being 60 years old in the same office. That's that. You go, okay, well maybe if I rearrange the furniture on the Titanic, it won't sink or whatever, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's tied in with impermanence and fear of death and all that kind of stuff for sure. And so I can relate to that absolutely. That thing of like everyone has their own idea of it's that seeking behavior. It's just one thing away. Maybe it is just the new clothes, or it's the new office, or the new house, and it's funny. It translates to all sorts of stuff too. Like you were saying, your buddy and you doing the music studio. Like okay, maybe it's saying fuck the man and doing my own creative thing, and maybe that did hit some certain things, but even that fell apart. And what I love again and again hearing people share about what tends to bring them to this is things failing them again and again and again. And that's Paul Hederman 101 is what can a failed system do? It can fail you. That's its greatest gift, is it can
yeah,
fail you again and again, and then at a certain point it's undeniable that it's a failed system, and then you're left to your own devices basically. I'm just interested, just on a little side note, what kind of music were you into, or did you record a certain genre or style?
yeah. I was very tuned into Red Hot Chili Peppers, like
Mm,
big fan,
yes, awesome, me too.
and then which was also actually a part of my disappointment because I was hoping to play something like that, but my friend was more tuned into Pink Floyd and stuff like that,
Okay.
and so it was kind of weird mix of Chili Peppers, Pink Floyd, so it's
Yeah,
hard to imagine.
I could
But
try. Yeah.
so yeah, and then yeah, like it's funny that the music career kind of passes through this non-duality trip, because at first it was the music band and I retreated from it when we lost our business, and I tuned into some esoterics, and then I was invited to another band which was much closer to what I was liking, and that's when I already quit my sort of telecommunication career, and this time I decided I will become uh, I will make a living on music,
Hmm.
and which we started to do with another band, and that's basically where I was thinking I was going into the direction of like becoming a musician. Things were working out. I, I had like some relationship happened, like occurred for me, which I was looking forward for a very very long time, since like university time. And then that's basically where it's funny that at one of the concerts I started feeling that something's kind of wrong. Like I was feeling like maybe it's flu or something, and I felt like not not very good in my body. And then we played the concert, and I went back home, and then this like big awakening experience occurred when I was like just almost reaching my apartment. I was at the parking lot, and suddenly like all sense of time just completely like
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Was that the first time something like that or that heavy hit for you?
yeah, like probably the first time when it was that much of experience. But then in retrospect, like a little bit later, I remembered an interesting episode when I was like before that somewhere in school, and I came back home from school, and I sat at the table, and I had the weird experience. Like I was like who's this? And the question and the answer was, but this is me. And then I completely kind of freaked out in the moment, and it was probably that scary that I even completely forgot about it, and I only remembered after that kind of second experience, which
Yeah,
was much bigger.
yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, you just did a little self-inquiry, sort of, without meaning to, I
and
guess.
and was completely, yeah, really completely automatic, because
Hmm.
I maybe I was reading Castaneda or something like that, but none of the non-duality at the moment.
Yeah, and I was just as you said that, I'm thinking of similar experiences when I was young, and it is kind of terrifying. Well, for the selfing, for that process, for the ego to go, oh no, there's kind of no foundation to stand on, and if you don't have that, going through all this later on in my life, but having Paul there, having fellowship, having people to talk this out with, so you don't feel like, oh no, if, who am I? I'm me, and then that doesn't quite make sense. You see some holes in that story, you're kind of terrified because you feel it's like being stuck in a bad acid trip or something. Like you're like, oh shit, So that hit for me as you were sharing that. That's really cool. And so we're saying, okay, you keep saying esoteric. Is that more in the realm of music, or is that like philosophers, or?
Was so when I was working like night times, I was going to bed like and I started one of the drummer in our bands introduced me to a book by Robert Monroe about out of body experiences.
Mm,
And so that was basically, I was really hardly practicing it. I mean, practicing it very hard. It So basically a short story that this guy was uh, kind of sleeping on his couch one night, and then kind of collapsed from his body, and then realized he sees him from the outside, and then he started tripping all over the place. And then the funny thing that he found a kind of university of out of body experiences
mm,
in the United States, and he built like cabins for people to go into this half dreamlike state and all that stuff. I was really practicing it really hard. He had tapes that you can listen to, and although I never had kind of out of body experiences, but I'm sure it kind of did something interesting with my kind of awareness or something.
yeah, yeah. Set the foundation maybe for that first little experience coming home from the concert.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now just I love, not everyone is as good at staying chronological as you have been so far, so I want to compliment you on that. Because I
Thank
have the anticipation of, okay, well, what comes next, right? So I'm going to ask, what came next? Was there certain teachers that you've stumbled across or certain experiences?
you.
It's
Yeah,
all yours.
and then also prior to that kind of big awakening, there was a moment when I was, apart from that book, I also started. It's funny that kind of life was introducing me to all kind of ideas again through mm, different musicians, because our band was constantly changing musicians. So it was me and my friend, like the main people, and then we were in constant search for better people or something like that. And then
Not to cut you off, what instrument do you play?
bass.
Oh, right on. Cool. You know what? I was gonna guess that. That's so funny. You got a bass personality, right on. I play guitar, and I have played bass too. Okay, go
That's
ahead.
cool.
Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they started introducing some funny books to me, and they were mostly in Russian. And one book was called Transurfing the Reality or something like that. And then it
Transferring
was,
or transcending?
uh, well, in Russian it's called Transurfing. So
Cool.
it's kind of like transcending plus surfing or something like
Yeah, I
that.
love it. That's better than transcending. It's more
And
verb trans surfing.
yeah, I never actually thought what it means. It's funny. And yeah, it started introducing some kind of something a little bit more close to non-duality maybe. And then probably the closest was a funny book that was called well, I don't really remember the name, but the idea was that you have kind of like opposite polarities, like hot and cold, or like ugly and beautiful, and you have it on paper and you can read it like ugly and beautiful, and then you say flush, and so so you're flushing all these polarities.
Flush it down the toilet.
Yeah, and at
That's
the
cool.
beginning of the book, it was like a little affirmation that you read, and it says like you're kind of connecting to the consciousness of the writer, which will help you with this process. It's like you are tuning into some kind of stream.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
uh,
That sounds like a hell of a cool book, man. What,
yeah,
what the name? You remember the name of it? It's something in
uh,
Russian, or I wonder if it's
yeah,
translated to English.
I just forgot the name of this animal. Maybe I'll maybe Google Translate. Uh, so it was called Turbo Ground Squirrel.
Turbo ground squirrel. That's awesome. I'm gonna look it up. I'll see if it's in English. It sounds like a cool practice of like,
Yeah,
yeah, holding two dualities and then flush it out. Right on.
and I never really thought uh, about like what it how it relates to non-duality, but actually quite relates to it because it has like opposite set of polarities, and
Hmm.
then it basically flashes it into kind of non-duality.
Yeah.
Flash or flush?
Flush like in the
Yeah,
toilet, like
toilet,
flush
yeah.
it.
That's what,
Yeah.
And then there was also, so basically, yeah. Then I had that big experience, and I it's like an interesting split occurred. Part of me was like super excited about it, and I thought like, wow, this must be all that stuff. I think I also was reading something else just prior to that, but I don't exactly remember. And I thought, well, all these books were. Oh yes, there was another thing called Cryon. It's like a channeler
oh yeah.
uh, that was something like presumably a spirit of Jesus Christ or something
Okay.
like that. And that's probably was the most uh, probably the closest to that idea of awakening or something like that, although they never speak in these terms, I think. So it was like more like raising vibrations or something like that. So yeah, I had this experience and I thought, wow, that's what they speak about. And then another part of me was like mortified or completely freaked out. And it was like an interesting split. And I actually grabbed a some paper and started writing down, because I think, wow, if I forget this, like I'm gonna regret. And so I written it down, and then it was funny, like I observed like split mind. One was saying like, wow, this is so cool, and the other was like all kind of fearful thoughts and stuff like that. And then it's kind of started subsiding, and then next day I woke up and it was back to so-called normal state, but also my body was very kind of stiff. It was like, I don't know, like after a horrible kundalini rush of energy or something like that. And then I kind of was very upset that it disappeared. But
Hell yeah.
but interestingly, that's not when I started seeking to return to it. Probably because I was too afraid of it, or maybe because I didn't like my conscious mind didn't understand what happened.
Yeah.
And so I basically kind of forgot about it, went into my music career again, like relationships. And then a friend of mine sent me a link on YouTube, which was Muji. And I started listening, and I had like a wave of resistance, and I thought like, what this man with beard is talking here, like in some kind of nonsense. And I just stopped it, and I went in the kitchen, and it was like man, he's describing my experience.
Yeah.
And then it's completely, I just lost it like for 3 months, like watching all his videos, like
Yep.
totally nonstop.
So interesting, man. So our stories have a lot of parallels. I started, I think I always had Kundalini stuff, but I never really knew what it was until someone gave me the verbiage for it. And then I sort of pursued it for a minute of like trying to create Kundalini states through listening to certain musics or doing meditations. And then it scared the shit out of me, and it was the same thing, the split mind of one is like, this is what you always been looking for. You've been asking for this, and then the other side going, but this is terrifying. You're going to fucking die. You're not going to be able to, hold down your responsibilities. You got a family to care about. So I had that thing going on, and I sort of dropped it. And then around that time, Muji, too, the same dude, was introduced to me. And the same, when I would listen to him, I would be the same thing of like, oh shit, this is a dude saying kind of what I always have been wanting to hear in such a beautiful, poetic way. And plus, I always had a connection with Ramana, and he's in that lineage. But there was a resistance at the same time. It was like a magnetic pull. Like I didn't want to watch the next video, but I kind of had to. So it's very funny that I'm hearing similar, yeah, process for you. Right on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're saying 3 months of Muji obsession, which might have been about as long as my obsession with too. And where did that lead you?
Well, then it led me to a broken relationship.
Yeah,
because
do that.
because uh, uh, yeah, and then so it actually was probably what they call a honeymoon with non-duality, because it was like really in the flow. Everything was, I don't know, this experience of I amness, like very joyous state. And then I literally felt that it's just around the corner, and not only felt like it's coming, but also felt like something is literally different. And then 3 months after, Muji came to Moscow. This is like for the first time, and I was like, wow, this is like a super coincidence. I've just
Uh-huh.
found him, and he's coming to Russia.
Synchronicity, yeah.
Yeah. So I went to his retreat, and
In Moscow?
yeah, in Moscow. And basically, I think, yeah, it was. I think I paid some money, and I was like very on a very low financial bottom at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, also, I think I received a credit card in my post box or something like that,
Yeah.
and I just used it for the retreat. And so yeah, I went there, and like the biggest pointer, the biggest thing that I liked was when he was introducing the idea of can the can the perceiver be perceived,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like played with it. And then basically it has gotten to a point probably which Paul calls like claiming, because I went into almost like trying to force, like I was like really gonna get it. Like,
Yeah,
can the perceiver be perceived, can the perceiver be perceived?
yeah.
And I
Damn it.
was sitting in Starbucks one day, like probably 9 months after that first awakening experience, all the trip with Muji. I was just so frustrated, like I just was just knocking my head on the wall with all that. And I just started roaming about in YouTube. Then I found Eckhart Tolle, and then after that, shortly I found Lisa Caird, and then I had again, like after Eckhart Tolle, I had like a second awakening, big awakening experience, which was kind of similar. I was on the street, everything was like no sense of time, everything is super vibrant and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I sent an email to Lisa Cairns, and because I was after Muji, I said something like, "Please guide me all the way, like into the total freedom."
Yeah.
And she replied back, and she said like, "I can't guide you. There's no you." And like what?
That's not what I want to hear.
Yeah. But then I somehow tuned into it, and I was watching her for a bit, and then I got in touch with some other people who were at the moment, and she basically just appeared on YouTube, her very first videos, and then some people were skyping with her, and I was invited to a like 5 people group Skype with Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
and it was super, like the energy was just so lovely. And but I was still kind of, my mind probably wasn't satisfied, and I was still kind of trying to find something in my head.
Still seeking.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And then basically she said like, maybe you should talk to Roger Castillo, who's a student of Ramesh Balsekar, and his yeah, main idea is non-doership.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically there was the next biggest part of my transition to teaching of non-doership with Roger. And also it's interesting that I met Lisa and Roger just at the moment where they were just starting with their teaching. They weren't
Yeah.
like on YouTube and stuff like that.
How long
And
ago was that?
Yeah. I was gonna
that was like 2011, something like that.
ask. Okay.
And yeah, so I spent like again like another year with Roger in Messenger. He was like sharing tons of stuff with me, all the concepts about non-doership, also about just consciousness and nature of consciousness. And yeah, it was a big thing for probably till 2013 or something like that.
Okay. Right on. Yeah, man. You had a real like slow cook, man. There's many layers. I'm thinking of
Yeah,
like when you smoke ribs or brisket, you get those rings of layers, low and slow. It's cool,
yeah,
man. I'm sure it's funny. I'm sure you have a similar feel to me. You look back, and it's like you don't think of all the steps. You just kind of think of where you're at. But that's what one of these things that's fun about this podcast is. Uh, giving the opportunity for someone to really consider, like, oh yeah, all these, you kind of see how they build on top of each other, and slowly reveal, and the funny thing always, when you end up where you're at right here, upon having never left, right? You can't help but see it all in a new light, right? There's new things are revealed, and then that's a cool thing that I talk with my kids about sometimes. Like, if you have a certain idea about something that happened in the past and what it means, just wait, it will change. Like, it's not, nothing is fixed for the rest of your fucking life. And there, to me, there's such a cool freedom in that, the story will continually, like Paul talks about, when you hit rock bottom, you say it's the worst day of your life, and then if you find AA and a few years later, it becomes the best day of your life because it was the day that you turned it around, right? So this is always a fun exploration. I'm really enjoying hearing your exploration through this. So cool. Okay, so we're up to about 2013. I'm very impressed with your ability to stay chronological. What do we got next?
Well, next, so yeah, I spent a year and a half probably with Roger, and then it reached a point when he basically said, looks like you have a good understanding of it. And I think he said, like, I think you got it or something like that. But I treated it like the final thing. And then for 5 minutes I had euphoria.
Yeah.
And then I was like,
after he said you've got it, then you had the 5 minutes of euphoria.
yeah. And then I was sitting again in the cafe. I was like, wait a minute, like that's not it. Like something is not complete.
I wanted to be forever.
Yeah. And then I started having like moments of despair, and I started going back to Roger, and he would point something out, and basically then I got frustrated with all that, because I kind of got it all in my well, it wasn't only in my head, it was also some kind of experience, but it wasn't the final thing, whatever it may be. And I kind of got frustrated with non-duality. I went back into like music a little bit, and then in 2015 again, I went to Roger's retreat in France, which was really cool. We were living in a like something like 17th century castle.
Wow.
For 2 weeks, and
Hell yeah.
there was a private cook which was cooking like gourmet food and stuff like that. And then apart from satsang, of course, and then there I started to have like really intense like emotional discomfort. And that's where Roger started introducing the idea of emotional releases. And I was really not into that. I kind of didn't look forward to have this dark night of the soul, like complete despair kind of thing. And that's basically, I returned back to Moscow, and then my life took a spin where I developed a addiction, kind of using non-duality, doing different like nasty things, and addiction. And so then that's how I went into the 12 steps for a year and a half. And that's basically where Paul comes in, because although I was already watching his non-duality things, but then it was interesting again, like interesting synchronicity, that although I wasn't enjoying that part of the journey at all, but it's interesting that Paul made that connection with non-duality in 12 steps.
Yeah.
And so I went into 12 steps, continued to kind of entertain non-duality. So I was there for a year and a half, and then basically again returned to Roger's teaching, Paul's not teaching, maybe even
Yeah.
just
Message.
talks. Yeah,
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's yeah. Plus watching a whole ton of non-duality teachers
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. You get it wherever you can, right? I'm similar.
Yeah.
Right on. Wow, that's really interesting, man. Yeah, it seemed like getting back to the slow cook, a lot a lot went on, a lot of marinating went on before that dark night of the soul rolled around.
Hmm.
which, yeah, which is interesting. In some ways, it's like what a blessing that you had the teaching and the foundation to have a certain state of awareness or recognition to see what it is, but it doesn't. When you're in it, it doesn't make it any easier. When you're in that despair and that hell on earth, it's. Yeah, I've been through similar places, man, and it's. Uh, I don't know the exact chronology of it exactly, but I know Paul was sort of the punchline in that too for me, because everything. There's so much great non-duality, so many great teachers, so many great stuff, so much great stuff on YouTube. And what I've said again and again is the one thing none of them are quite offering that the message that Paul gives is an end to seeking. Like you can just drop it. It's not in the next thing. It's not. It's seeing what you're not. And the greatest illustration of what you're not is believing it's anywhere except for right here. Believing it's just around the corner. Believing, oh, or even more insidious, if I could have changed something in the past, right? If I would have just shifted this little gear or that or this, and met this person or not have done this. And the gift of surrendering to all of that and ending up right here where you already are that's what I'm all about. That's what this podcast is all about. This is what I love sharing with people. And what an interesting story, man. That really, it's like a roller coaster. There's lots of twists and turns and ups and downs. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see you here. Um, I don't want to project, but it seems like probably the lightest traveling so far on the whole roller coaster.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Who knows? But
Who knows exactly? Yep.
because when I was like in all these 5 years in non-duality, I had no idea I would go into 12 steps
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of ass backwards because I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
like
I was
I
thinking
want.
that. Yeah.
I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the addiction came in late in the game. Normally, most people, your story's flipped on its head, which is interesting. Yeah, there's something unique there too.
And it's also interesting that back in the very first years, I was listening to a Adyashanti's book, the End of Your World, and in the book he introduced the idea of like a kind of phase when ego grasps the teaching, and it becomes like a super ego. And I was like listening to it, and then also in the same book he said like his teacher warned him of that, but he still went through all that. And I was like, well, hopefully that doesn't happen with me, because now because
Mm-hmm.
now I heard that, like
Yeah,
I was
you
like,
had the warning.
yeah, I had the warning, and then it's funny to see that I went through exact like
Yep.
particular stages.
It's just like family, huh? You know, like the parents and the grandparents know that, but
That's
Yeah,
it.
you got to
Yeah.
repeat at least
Your,
some.
your your parents come to you and you say, "Hey, learn from me. Don't make the same mistakes." And you know, inevitably, so many of the kids make the same mistakes, and it's such a I more and more what I love about non-duality and Paul's message with so many of them is understanding that it's not going to make sense in the mind. Once you've created a thought, once there's been a thought or a word or an explanation for something, it's dead. It's not the verbing. It's not the river, right? You go in and you take a cup and scoop out the river and you go, this is the Colorado River. No, it's dead at that point. It's the rivering. You missed the most important part. And if a parent comes up to their kid and says, hey, don't make these same mistakes I did. They're presenting a dead, idea to them. That's, I think, going back to the Adyashanti and hearing it. Okay, well, I got the warnings, and I'm not going to miss it. It's funny too because it's one warning in one book, and Paul's message is like he's like the most important things are the warnings. I'm going to hit you guys with it twice a week, forever. Because if you're missing the warning, then, like you said, the claiming. What's claiming it? What's the one that believes it's okay? I got it. Not going to fall for that one, and then on with my merry way. That's the policeman and the robber just exchanging, suits. So it's one of the very funny. It's to be on the other end of it. It's fucking hilarious, but yeah, when you're in it, it can cause a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
Can I ask
And
how
then
that worked out with the addiction? Did the addiction go into remission and that stayed relatively small, or did it
Well,
continue to be a big issue?
I'd say I still experience the like remnants of it, but the big part of it was removed. The behavior of my personality changed in a great way. Like I stopped doing all these weird things to other people, and then using non-duality to say like, "Oh, I didn't do it."
Really?
And well, I mean, of course, it's still happening, but like not to the degree when I was like really burning bridges and stuff like that, and like forcing myself into like really shitty financial situation. Just weird relationships with people, just using people and stuff like that. Like the big part was change for sure, but it's I can't say that I completely kind of cured from that.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are, right? Yeah, but
Yeah,
if anything, it's not. Mike and I talk about this all the time. It's not the idea of like, okay, I officially am done doing fucked up things forever. Like, because that's just the complete. That's only going to create tension of the
Yes.
next time that you
Yeah.
that you do the fucked up thing and then you beat yourself up for it. That becomes its own little perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy. Circulating current of the same thing, but. Maybe there's a creation. For me, one of the ways I like to explain it, even to people that aren't into non-duality, is there's more space. So instead of the the impulse reaction, and then you do it, and then that can be a lot more destructive with relationships, with finances, with so many things. There's a little bit more space and recognition of, to use the Paul language, what you're not. You go, okay, this drive, this is a completely law-abiding natural drive that's designed by evolution, because evolution's job is to keep me alive, keep me safe, and let me procreate, right? So that drive is doing its job, but there's a little bit of space to go, but it's not a skillful way to act out, And if anything, over time, it seems like a generally progressive climb for me of more and more space, more and more pause. I love that Paul, way of framing it, a pause, under a rest, being under rest. And just, if you can chill the hell out, a lot of those tornadoes are allowed to come and go. And they tend to be a lot smaller, and a lot quicker. They come and go a lot quicker too. So it's cool to hear, like, I if someone comes along and they go, yep, I'm definitely 100% done taking advantage of people, I'm like, uh-oh, like, there's something you're missing there, man, but okay, you're allowed to be where you're at. But I always enjoy somebody saying, yeah, there's been improvement and there's still work to be done. I say that I say it to my kids. I still got work to do, guys. I got probably another 60 years of, work to put in over here, and that's what life is. Don't ever believe you got it solid. So
and that part that Paul speaks about, but even right before, right when I left the 12 steps, then I heard Roger introduced an idea, kind of, which stuck in my head, and I remember that even the video was called "An Interesting Look at Addiction," And he introduced an idea which probably, if I heard it before the 12 steps, I would probably use it in the wrong way. But
Yeah.
after that, it was interesting to hear that he said, like, if you have an urge, like, let's say, to eat an ice cream, and like the original thing behind that is probably guilt. And so if you eat an ice cream and then you have a guilt on top of it, that's where the vicious circle starts. And then he said, like, he introduced an idea that no one ever said to me, that just basically the main thing is awareness of your behavior. And then also like just like in the 12 steps, like realize that you're powerless over it.
Yeah.
And then if it happens, then kind of see that you were powerless, and then maybe the initial guilt is there, but there won't be a secondary layer of guilt for
Yes.
like, I shouldn't have done this.
Mhm.
And then basically he said, if you have an addiction to alcohol, like maybe not in a like a horrible way, but if you have an addiction in a way that you sometimes drink more, like like a little bit more than you wanted to, then just maybe try that idea, that to see that you were forced to do that. You're basically like in 12 steps, but it was like a little from a little different angle.
Mhm.
And then in relationship to guilt. And then he said, like, first, what likely would happen is that you will stop blaming yourself for kind of being for basically acting out. And then um, you'll see. And he also said that it's very easy to see in an example of depression, because when depression comes for people, like, it's super easy to see that you didn't do it. Like, you would have easily turned off from it, like switched it off, but you can't do anything about it. And so
Absolutely.
that was that was the first thing. And then I heard Paul saying that stuff kind of in his own way, uh, and um, and then it leads to probably my latest passion, uh, like a teacher called Robert Wolf, and he has um, like a separate section on his website, and it's specifically about a thing called Ajada, which is from, I think, from Ramana's teaching, and also somewhere around it. And it's the idea of, it also coincides with the idea of emptiness in Buddhism. And it's so the basic concept is that non-duality speaks that there isn't, basically there aren't two things. And Ajada kind of goes even beyond that by saying that even whatever this is basically nothing. And yeah, so I just recently discovered it. A friend suggested it to me, and I started reading, and it was like, I don't know, like really something experiential. Like I kind of lost track a little bit of
Yeah, no,
where I
that's
was
cool.
going.
I want to. I don't ever take notes, but I'll try to remember. If I say it, maybe Mike will remember too. Robert Wolf, was that the name of the?
Yeah, and there's a really cool. So it's Wolf, like Wolf, but with the E at the end.
Okay.
And there was a really cool short video, 20 minutes, where he sits in the nature, and then he introduces all that stuff. And then if you go to his website, which I think is livingnonduality.com, there's a separate section about Ajara. And I basically printed that stuff, and I was reading it for a few weeks, and it's like really probably kind of this the same feeling that maybe only with Paul I had this sense of pause. But
Mm,
then again, when I was reading that stuff, it also like And there is a really nice quote that he quotes in this book like over and over again. I think it's from some older Zen saying, which says, "If there's nothing from the start, where can the dust alight?"
Yeah.
And it was like, sounds like poetry for me. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so, just to share a similar feeling, I love Paul's message. It's my go-to kind of anchor through the week. But I still love certain experiential things too, because they are cool little anchors. And I also, it sounds like this certain technique is similar in that it's incredibly simple, right? Like for me, it needs to be like a one-step process, or else I'm not going to do it reliably. Got too much chaos in my day. So people that listen to this podcast probably know what I'm going to bring up. My favorite one is the headless way. Have you ever heard any of that stuff?
Douglas Harding.
Douglas Harding, that's the one. We almost
Uh-huh.
always get the name wrong. Yes, and his student Richard Lang, I've been emailing back and forward with. He's going to do the podcast sometime soon, which I'm super stoked about. So yeah, again, that kind of when you were talking about the experiential, I thought of two things. I thought of Tibetan Dream Yoga, if you've heard of any of that, and then
Mhm.
also Headless Way of just like there's no requirements, just look for your head. You know, like it's a one-step process, and it for me, one of the things a lot for me is like all your problems kind of are based around the idea that you have a head. So as soon as you look for it, and you realize you can't find
Where's the
it,
head?
where's the head? And in a way, all the problems kind of go away. And in this
Yeah.
very reliable way, like it's so empty. It's so just that.
So Jada.
Yeah, so yeah, it is. It really is empty in this way of like there's so many skillful means. There's so many mantras that can be co-opted by selfing and imply something. And yeah, maybe they have that kind of addictive quality in that they work for the first 100 times, and then you start to see. And I've even kind of like done a little awareness experiment of like, can selfing claim to have no head? And it can't quite seem to do it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to share that with you because you were
Yeah.
sharing that cool. And then Tibetan Dream Yoga is a similar thing. Of in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a certain practice of asking yourself. It's a one question practice. Am I dreaming? Right?
Mm.
And then
Mm.
you can get to the point. I think the idea is when you're dreaming, you do the same thing, kind of lucid dreaming. You go, "Am I
Mhm.
dreaming?" And then when you wake up, you keep asking the question, "Am I dreaming?" And then you check in, and that can for one create a little pause again. That, "Am I dreaming?" Oh, you got to look, right? Instead of being identified as the dreamt, as we can tend to spend most of our time. For a moment, you're kind of seeing from the dreaming. You go, "Am I dreaming?" And then it just like right now, it kind of just all the thoughts sort of
Yeah.
screech to a halt, and then if reliably throughout the day, you more and more can see from the dreaming instead of from the dream. So you just inspired me to share those two with you because you
Yeah, that's
shared.
beautiful, and I really, maybe I will try this headless thing in regards to selfing, because that's interesting. And I like the dream is my favorite analogy. Like
Yeah.
probably it's from Ramana, but also like many other teachers like Rupert
Hmm.
Spira, like even Roger also often uses that concept, and as well as Robert Wolf was just recently reading, and he uses it over and over, like if you dream about some stuff and then you wake up, like where's all that?
Yeah.
And and then I remembered actually why I brought Robert up, just to finish kind of the link, because when we were speaking about like improving the behavior and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I think there is a certain degree of that before, maybe when the most horrible claiming and using of non-duality stops, and then there is a point where what Paul calls acceptance of the character
Yeah.
jumps in, and that's what I really loved about Robert's book, that he says that this is not about like becoming a saint, this is not about improving your behavior, and
Yeah.
he puts it in a simple way that whatever is happening, that's the absolute doing its thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it couldn't be anything else, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And there's a lot of relief that can come from that recognition.
yeah, yeah. I was when I watched that little video with him, I was just it wasn't like big awakening experience like I had before, but it was like a relief, and I thought, wow, that relief is much better than any awakening experience I had.
100, yes, bro, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And that's something that the reason uh, that I reliably go to Paul's meetings is because it's the relief. Yes, all sorts of crazy awakening Kundalini stuff happens sometimes. Sometimes nothing happens. But and Paul always talks about in the end, what more can you ask for than traveling lighter? We think chariot to the gods or whatever, or we're going to transcend, and it's like that idea of wanting to transcend and all of that. It's a great motivating force because it's taking it's the logical conclusion of it's going to be in the next T-shirt I buy. It's going to be in the next drink. It's going to be in the next girlfriend. It's going to be in the next job. It's going to be in the next whatever. You can go down, and then the logical conclusion is transcending this fucking place, right? Like that's the ultimate seeking, the ultimate drive of seeking. And okay, let's say you hit some sort of state of transcending. For one, if you really transcended, you want to be around to notice.
Yeah,
Because
until some,
until you come back in, right? Until you come back online.
until you
And then,
say I'm transcending.
yeah, I'm transcending. Oh, damn it! I stopped it again. That's I'm having an epiphany. Oh, the epiphany stuff. But then the other thing is when I've had super intense energy experiences, it's always sort of like, oh no, this wasn't what I wanted. In some way, that split brain again of, oh yeah, this is what I wanted. This is so cool, and then kind of like, oh wait, no, it's not quite. And we've talked about that in drug experiences too, where you kind of go like, wow, I feel quote the happiest and most amazing I've ever felt, but it's just this isn't it. That promise that was made by the seeking behavior, it never delivers.
Mm-mm.
On what it promises, and that's a great. So that creates relief is a recognition of that. So in the end, what more do you want than traveling lighter? That's I'm in that book, like I'm in that court, like
Or see that which
I see that which
does
is
want to ask for more than traveling lighter.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see that as what wants more than traveling lighter is not me, and and again, just to echo that relief of, you know, you can travel lighter of all this stuff, and all the other stuff is cool. And if you're into something, you can't make yourself stop being into it.
Yeah,
I think about that all the time. If you're into music, you're going to continually listen to music and enjoy it, and if you're into the spiritual stuff, you're going to continue to do it. But seeing through the lie that you're ever going to arrive anywhere except for right where you are, is that's where the relief is, I
yeah. And I never, because some people are saying like they went into non-duality and then they kind of didn't get what they wanted, and then although I never heard it from people, I heard it from teachers that people
think.
would come to them, like talk with them, have some kind of opening, and then kind of saying, well, that's probably not what I was looking for, and just went by. And I never could imagine for myself, like, I can't possibly forget about it. Like,
Non-duality.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like once you've been let in on this little secret or this little way of seeing it, you kind of can't help. But I liken it to once you know that your parents are Santa Claus, you can't force yourself to believe that they're actually the Santa Claus anymore. It's just once it's revealed, and yeah, life goes on, but from this new perspective. So I just got my alarm, so we're going to wrap this up. We obviously have a whole lot more we could dive into and share. So this will be the best conversations around finish. This will be a continuation. But what a great introduction to you, Dmitry. Man, you got a great story, and this was a lot of fun.
Thanks. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't even notice how time went by.
Yeah, I know. It felt like a few minutes, right? It just that was
Yeah,
an hour. It just flew by.
But we just switched rooms now, right?
Yeah, we switch rooms. We'll see you. You'll be in a slightly smaller square.
yeah, in
Right
a
on, Dmitry. That was
non-existent
so much
square.
fun. Oh, you know what? I should do this. Do you want to promote anything? Some people listen to this, your website or anything like that.
Well, if someone needs a web design, then they can check out my website, which is hard to pronounce. Really, it's design, but without the e. It's like DSIGN dot site.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Design
That's
dot site.
easy.
Yeah, that's easy.
It still does have the S. Design.
Yeah,
But, I mean, with the dot in the middle. Okay. Cool.
yeah,
Right on. Cool. Well, check them out, guys, if you need computer work, especially in the realm of non-duality. Because
yeah,
you're doing Paul's now, which is awesome,
yeah.
and you also do your other uh,
I did
teacher, yeah.
Rogers. I did. Yeah, like some people were joking that I should put non-dual web designer on my website.
You might be the first in the world to have that job classification.
Yeah,
Talk about a unique niche. Yeah.
yeah,
Right on, Dmitry. Okay, well, we're going to sign out. I'm going to get some water and prepare for satsang. So thank you so much, man.
yeah. Thanks so much for enjoying. Really appreciate it.
That was fun. Thanks.
Yeah.
See you in a second.
Bye bye. Yeah. See ya.
That was awesome.